You need pictures for your children's picture book. I mean, it's in the name. But there are lots of considerations when figuring out that main element of your book. Should you go digital or traditional? Do you try to draw the pictures yourself, or do you hire an illustrator for it? And if you do decide to draw the pictures yourself, how do you set up your workspace and canvas so that you have the best looking picture you can have? That's why I'm here. I'll help you get started drawing and publishing your very first children's book. Today we'll be going over some of the options for illustrations in your book, as well as sharing helpful tutorials if you want to draw your own children's books. Hello, my name is Jessica Wright, and I just finished publishing my first children's book, Gentle and the Picnic Pals, and I want to share how I did it so that way you can do the same. This is a video series going into a deep dive about what I did to publish my book, helping other aspiring authors to make their own children's picture book creations. So be sure to subscribe for the next tutorial on publishing children's books. So, this is the exciting part. Seeing your picture book finally start to take form with pictures and words colliding together on the page. Firstly, though, you've got to decide what style of illustration you want to use for your book. Figuring out what style your children's book will be in is important for whether you're hiring an illustrator or drawing the pages yourself. And there are a lot of illustration styles. I'll lightning round just a few styles to get your mind thinking about what styles would work best for your book. Cartoon illustration, like I use in my book, using cartoonish characters to share the story. This can have a variety of styles within this style. Realistic illustration, using realistic depictions of people to share the story. I found this kind of illustration style works well in non-fiction children's books, as well as others with a more serious tone. Sketchy styles. Usually a more messy type of style, but sometimes a sketchy style showcases comedy better. Black and white. I'd personally use this one sparingly, but if your line work is amazing and color would only distract from the beautiful lines, then more power to ya. Your book will also be less expensive to print if you go this route. Bright and bold colors. Exactly what it says on the tin. The colors are bright and bold. This works well for silly books or educational books. Muted and gentle colors. Again, it's what it says on the tin, but the colors are meant to give more of a comforting feeling. Watercolor style. Painted with a soft watercolor feel, this personally is the style I was trying to emulate on my book, Gentle and the Picnic Pals. Pencil and charcoal. Another black and white style, but you can get beautiful gray tones in there to give extra depth to your illustrations. Collage and papercraft. Using interesting textures of printed paper gives your picture book an interesting look that really pops off a shelf. I'd only warn you that this style is time-consuming when done right. Complex. Adding lots and lots of detail to the pages to really give it a sense of atmosphere for your readers. Simple. Sometimes all you need is a fun character and a white background to tell your story. There really is no right or wrong style when it comes to making your children's book, with only one exception: AI-generated images. There has been a lot of discourse about AI-generated children's books, and none of it is great. At the very least, it cheapens the book that you're trying to sell, and at the most, it can get you into legal trouble with copyright infringement. And if you use generative AI for the pictures, who's to say you didn't use it for the writing as well? It makes you seem dishonest and not in the best interest of your customers. And you might genuinely not be a dishonest person, but using technology that stole information, hard work, and years of learning experience from other artists and gave them no credit, no compensation, or say if they wanted their artwork to be included in the machine, will make you look dishonest if you choose to use it. But what if you're only using it for the pictures and not the writing? Shouldn't that make it all right? using AI for one part of the book and not the other does not make it right. All disciplinaries of art and creation are under attack from AI. Music, writing, pictures, fashion, everything. Don't say it's okay for one form of art to be substituted when you think AI is not okay for the other. Stand up for your fellow creators. My last comment about why generative AI should not be used in books: it is terrible at staying consistent between illustrations. Consistency is a big thing in children's picture books, and we'll be going over that next in the video. However, I will add here that AI either cannot or will make it very difficult to stay with a consistent art style all the way through your book, making it look trashy, unprofessional, and cheap. Don't use generative AI in your books. It's just not a good idea for a long-term business standpoint or an artistic standpoint. We went over this a little already, but it is important that the art style stay consistent in the book. Changing art styles can put a reader off from the book or make the book seem confusing and lacking focus. It might make a child disinterested if a character is drawn one way on the page but is unrecognizable on another page. Art and pictures are a form of communication as well. When done right, your pictures tell the story just as much, if not more, than the words do. Changing styles of art is like changing fonts in writing. It can create more emphasis in your words if you change the font or underline it and bold it in some spots, but it can also detract if not used intentionally. I'm sure the stubborn of you are now going to go out and create the best-selling children's book that changes art styles like 50 times, but then you'd only be creating a different style for your book. Gotcha. So long as your art stays consistent, it will draw in readers and not confuse them. This next piece of advice is actually more of a guideline than an actual rule for making a children's picture book, and that is to keep your character designs simple and repeatable. I got this advice from learning how to make comic books. Let's face it, you're going to be drawing the characters of your book a lot. People will notice when an aspect about them changes, and sometimes it can be very difficult to draw the same character over and over again if they have too many fiddly bits to remember about their character design. When I was drawing Gentle and the Picnic Pals, I created a character lineup of all the main characters of my story, and made swatches about what colors I used in their character. In my drawing program, I also created a palette so that way I could easily access the colors of each of the main characters used. I also ended up saving more colors as I went on, and more things needed to be consistent, like the background colors, the Picnic Pals colors, as well as the other colors I used to create light and shadow in my book. Between going back and forth from the color palette and the character lineup, a page in my book still took anywhere from 3 to 7 days to finish up a page. And I still made some mistakes, especially with the backgrounds. The most glaring one to me is the difference between bushes on one page and then other pages. That bush drawing isn't consistent with that bush drawing. I let it slide because the bushes are not the main characters, but I still probably should have had a drawing detailing how I was supposed to draw the foliage. I knew that I would be drawing a lot of it, but I didn't do it. But then there are also exceptions to this rule, such as the detailed paintings of CMYK. The works of CMYK, sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce her name a little bit, for children's picture books, such as The 12 Dancing Princesses by Mariana Mayer and Keen Midas in the Golden Touch by Charlotte Kraft are highly detailed and definitely not easily repeatable. However, that doesn't make the books any less of a work of art and beauty, and I found that each time you read the books she illustrated, you see something new. So, it's not a hard and fast rule to keep your character design simple. It just depends on what you want your book to be, what feeling you want to give it, and if you're willing to put in the time and effort to make the characters more detailed. Now we are going to move on to the book size determination, where you determine what size you actually want your book to be. It's vital that you figure out what size your book is before you actually start drawing the pages, because that determines the space you or your illustrator has to work with. There is no straightforward answer to what sizes children's picture books are supposed to be honest. There are a lot of range of heights and widths to choose from. What I'd suggest is to find a children's book you like the size of, and then measure it to get a rough idea of what the size of your book will be. It is also a good idea to go online to the publisher or printer that you want to work with and see what sizes of books they offer to print. I made my book 8.5 inches by 8.5 inches because when asking my mom what she liked in picture books, she read to me and my siblings, she said that she preferred the small square books because they opened up into rectangles that weren't cumbersome when reading with a child in her lap. The size was also more manageable for teachers when holding up a book to read to a classroom, which is why I made it comparatively smaller than the picture books I have on my shelf. I want it to be a good experience for an adult to read their child this book, so 8.5 by 8.5 was my winning size. It also helped that both Ingram Spark, Barnes & Noble's Press, and KDP all offered the same size for printing. Now that we know what size your book is going to be, we can start setting up your canvas. For those working with traditional mediums, you can skim this section of the video or come back to it when you're scanning in your illustrations to your computer. For those going into digital computer programs to draw your illustrations, remember this: make your canvas color space. CMYK. CMYK, for those who don't know, stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. This is the color space that most all printers use in order to figure out how to make a color. Have you ever printed something in a color and that color came out of the printer looking all weird and not the color that you saw on the screen? That's because the image might have been using the color space RGB, meaning red, green, and blue, because that's the color space computer screens use to project images. Now, there can still be color discrepancies no matter what color space you use, just because of the nature of printing physical books. Blues and purples tend to be the biggest offenders, often coming out too dark or too saturated in my experience. However, working in CMYK color spaces will mitigate a lot of the color mistakes printing makes in advance. So, for Gentle and the Picnic Pals, I knew that the darker colors were going to be tricky to get right. So I ended up making the darker colors a little lighter than I wanted them so that there wouldn't be as many color corrections I needed to make when going to print. However, I didn't follow my own rule. Most of Gentle and the Picnic Pals was drawn in an RGB color space, and I had to go through the pain of converting them all into CMYK so that the printers could read my files correctly. Most I didn't change at all, and I just hope and prayed for the best. Don't do what I did. just draw them in CMYK in the first place? Oh, and if you're scanning in your traditional art, make sure the scanner can scan files into a CMYK color profile, or have a photo editing software that you can save your file in CMYK. It'll make your life a whole lot easier. Before you go cutting your paper, making new canvases on your drawing programs, etc., there is a few more things to consider. One of them being bleed and safety margin lines. The size of your book might not be the size of your paper or canvas. In fact, it definitely isn't, because you have to add bleed to your image. Bleed is the overflow of an image that will be trimmed away after printing. So, if you've ever seen a picture go up to the edge of a page, likely that image had bleed on it so that it could look nice and crisp after the printers cut the book down to size. Printers have different rules for bleed sizes, but whatever the size they want is the size that you should add on to your image. For example, Gentle and the Picnic Pals is 8.5 by 8.5 inches. Ingram Spark, Barnes & Noble Press, and Amazon all want bleed on the images going 0.125 inches around the edge of the book. It is important to note that they don't want bleed where the page will be connected to the spine. So, depending on if I'm working with a left or right page, the area of the bleed is going to be different. Let's calculate the actual size I should be working with for my canvas. With the width of my canvas, it should be 8.5 inches plus 0.25 inches. That makes the width of my canvas 8.625 inches. The height of my book is going to be 8.5 inches as well, but there are two edges that need bleed added onto it. So it should be 8.5 inches plus 0.125 inches for the top and 0.125 inches for the bottom, making the height of my canvas 8.75 inches. Voila! The true size for my canvas. Now, if the detailed decimal places scare you, there's no shame in adding more bleed onto your canvas than necessary. In fact, I encourage it so that way you can see where your bleed line is more accurately. Just make sure to take a mental note or mark where that bleed line is, because anything that is in the bleed will be cut off in your final printed book. Now, for safety margins, which are completely different than bleed margins. Safety margins are in the visible page of your images. Because the printer is going to be cutting off the bleed from the page, they want some wiggle room so that if they happen to make a mistake while cutting, they don't end up cutting off some of the words or an integral part of the picture. Anything that is important to the story, words, faces, important details in the drawing, should stay out of the safety margins and located within the center of the page. That doesn't mean that you should leave your safety margins empty though. They will still be part of the finished piece and visible to the reader. Just make sure that nothing important is in those margins. Most safety margins are anywhere from 0.25 inches from the edge of the page to 0.5 inches. I always tend to go with the bigger size because it works for more printers that way. They also want you to put margins on all sides of the page, including where the spine is. Have you ever opened a book and the words are stuck where the fold of the spine is, making it really difficult to read? Yes, that's why they want you to have a margin where the spine is too. In order to figure out where our safety margins are on our canvas, we'll start out with the original size of our book. Again, I'll use my book's margins as an example. Gentle and the Picnic Pals is 8.5 by 8.5 inches. I'm going to be putting a 0.5 inch safety margin on my image so that all the important stuff stays safe. So I will take the width, 8.5 inches, and subtract the margin from the edge of the page, as well as the part of the page that will connect to the spine. 8.5 inches subtracted by 0.5, and then again by 0.5, is 7.5 inches of safe space in the middle of my canvas. We'll do the same for the height. 8.5 inches subtracted by 0.5 for the bottom, and 0.5 for the top is 7.5 inches for the safe spot in the middle of my canvas. I have a 7.5 by 7.5 safe zone where I can put all the important words and important parts of the illustration within it, and then a 0.5 inch border going around it that I can put less important things in. If you're still confused, please watch the section on bleed and safety margins again. It is very important that you get this right so that your book can look the best that it can. The last tip I have for you with canvases and artwork size is that sometimes working at a bigger scale is better, especially when it comes to using traditional art in picture books. Generally, most people find it difficult to work in a smaller canvas size when it comes to art. There are some artists who don't do well doing mini sculpture and paintings. They can't convey very many details in their work. There's nothing wrong with this, but if you want to create a very detailed drawing or painting, then it's 10 times easier to start with a larger workspace, then shrink down your artwork afterward when making the pages for your children's book. With digital art, this is a little different because you can start at the dimensions of your book and zoom in and out freely, allowing you to make your artwork pixel perfect if you so desire. When using traditional mediums such as paint and pen, you're restricted by how small you can make your brush strokes and what physical materials you have to make the width of a line just right. Starting with a bigger canvas in that regard is much more important than it is while using digital art. That being said, if you're comfortable creating at your chosen book size and can get the desired detail in the size as a traditional artist, then really there is no need to upscale your drawing dimensions. But please, do not work on a canvas that is smaller than or does not scale with your ideal page size. The size ratio from your artwork to your book page should be the same, allowing your artwork to fit within the confines of the page without warping your artwork to be taller or wider than it was intended. Scaling up the size of an image makes them lose more detail and can make your artwork look pixelated and crunchy, like a blurry 80s video game. This can happen when you scale down the size of an image as well, but there's a lot more leeway and the graphics are more forgiving for scaled down images than it is for scaled up images. My rule of thumb is to make the image about 1/3 bigger to twice the size that you want the page to be. Lastly, after you have everything set up, have the dimensions figured out, and have the picture drawn in the art style of your choosing, please keep the working file saved somewhere. Sometimes things can go wrong. A color prints out not as you thought it would, or you spot a mistake that you didn't see before in your art that you need to correct. For traditional artists, sometimes colors don't scan in properly, and you need to either edit the colors on a computer or get a light box and redraw the page over again. I promise you, as you're making your 36 illustrations of your book, there will be mistakes, and you will need to correct them before bringing your book to the public. Take my book, for example. I was pretty confident in my drawings, so I decided to have it printed to show my friends and family. Most said they loved it, but one of them pointed out that they could still see the sketch lines underneath one of my drawings. I hadn't even noticed. So because I had my working file, I quickly went back in, turned off the sketch layer, and then exported it and set up my print file to reflect the correction. Now, imagine if I hadn't had my working file on my computer. I just created a lot more work for myself covering the sketch layer on a JPEG or PNG than simply just turning off a mistaken layer. And imagine if I brought my book to print and my colors didn't turn out the way I wanted them. Let's say Echo's blue outfit came out too dark, or Gentle turned out pink instead of purplish pink that I wanted her to be. In order to go back and make those changes on the final PNG files would take a long time, and it might not even be possible without messing up other elements like shading or tints and stuff on the page. So, make your life easier and save the working file of your artwork. Or traditional artists, save your sketches and final line artwork and invest in a lightbox to make changes more easily down the line. Honestly, you traditional artists inspire me. I don't know how you handle messing up and just having to start again from scratch. I will join you one day, but today is not that day. That is the end of the art style, character design, and setting up your canvas section of this tutorial. Next time, we will be going over how to hire an illustrator in case you don't want to draw the illustrations yourself. It's a perfectly valid route to go down, but there are some do's and don'ts when working with an illustrator, as well as ways you can identify scams to help you get to the right illustrator for your project. After that, we'll be going over how to make some of the special pages for your children's book, such as the title page, copyright page, and the author section and cover pages. So, subscribe and turn on bell notifications so you don't miss when that comes out. You'll get a lot more arts and crafts videos, drawing time lapses, as well as storytelling and creating videos as well from me in the future. Otherwise, check out my book, Gentle and the Picnic Pals. The links to purchase it are in the description down below. I hope you check it out. It's really fun. I love it so much. I'll see you later. Bye-bye!